All right, let's jump right in. Today we are talking about two of the biggest names in neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. You hear them mentioned together all the time and it can get really confusing. But the truth is, they're fundamentally different journeys inside the human brain. So let's unravel this.
So think about it. One condition can lock you inside your own body, attacking your ability to move. Another can slowly erase who you are, stealing your memories, your very sense of self. What is the real difference here? That's the question we're going to tackle, looking at exactly what's happening deep inside the brain in both cases.
Okay, first things first, we've got to get this key term straight: dementia. A lot of people think dementia is a specific disease, but it's not. It's actually an umbrella term. Think of it as the category name for a decline in mental ability that's bad enough to mess with your daily life. And while memory loss is the most famous symptom, it can hit all sorts of cognitive skills. Alzheimer's is simply the most common cause of dementia. Now let's get to the real heart of it. Yeah, both diseases are about brain cells getting damaged and dying off, but they follow two completely distinct paths. They attack different neighborhoods of the brain, different systems, and that changes everything.
Here's a good way to picture it. Imagine the brain is a massive, sprawling city. In both Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, parts of this city start to shut down. But the crucial difference is which parts go dark first. One disease targets the city's transit authority, the system that controls all movement. The other one? It goes right for the city's libraries, its archives, and its main communication centers.
So let's zoom in on Parkinson's first. The best way to understand this disease is to think of it as a catastrophic communication breakdown, specifically in the parts of the brain that plan and control movement.
And what's really fascinating is that we've known about this for a long, long time. When the physician James Parkinson first described it way back when, he called it the shaking palsy. It's such a simple, vivid name, and it just perfectly captures that most obvious symptom, doesn't it? The tremor.
So what's really behind that shaking? Well, the modern definition tells us everything. Parkinson's is all about the loss of very specific brain cells, the ones that produce a super important chemical messenger called dopamine. Without enough dopamine, the brain's instructions for smooth, easy movement get garbled. They get lost in translation. And that leads to those classic signs: the tremor, the stiffness, and that slowness of movement. Let's trace how that happens. It all starts in a tiny little spot in the midbrain, an area called the substantia nigra. The neurons there that crank out dopamine just start to die off. As they die, the brain's dopamine supply plummets. And with that chemical messenger gone, the control center for movement just can't send its signals properly. And the result? Those smooth, automatic movements we all take for granted, they become a huge struggle.
Okay, now let's completely switch gears and look at Alzheimer's, because this is a totally different picture. If Parkinson's is a communication breakdown, Alzheimer's is a full-on system collapse. We're talking about the brain's internal highways, its cleanup crews, and eventually its ability to think, remember, and reason.
As we said before, Alzheimer's is the big one, the leading cause of dementia. It's a progressive disease that causes this widespread, global damage to cognitive function. So we're not just talking about forgetting your keys. We're talking about a fundamental unraveling of personality, of judgment, of the very ability to navigate the world.
And here's where it gets wild. In Alzheimer's, the brain is fighting a war on two fronts. Inside the neurons, a protein called tau, which is supposed to be like the railroad ties for the cell's transport system, gets all twisted up into what we call tangles. This makes the whole transport system inside the cell just collapse. At the exact same time, outside the neurons, these sticky proteins called beta amyloid start clumping together into plaques, acting like massive roadblocks between the cells. This 1-2 punch is what leads to so much devastation and cell death.
So, okay, we have two totally different kinds of attacks happening in two different brain systems. It makes perfect sense, then, that the telltale signs, the symptoms we can actually see on the outside, are also going to be worlds apart.
And this, right here, is where it all clicks into place. Look at the list for Parkinson's on the left. Every single symptom is about movement. You've got the pill-rolling tremor when you're at rest, the cogwheel stiffness, the slow start to any motion, even the handwriting shrinking. It is all a physical result of that dopamine shortage. Now look to the right, at Alzheimer's. The problems are all cognitive. It's memory loss, trouble finding words, not recognizing your own family, massive changes in judgment. The core issue is with the processing of thought, not the execution of movement.
So it stands to reason, right? Because the root problems are so incredibly different, the way we try to manage these conditions has to be different too. You just can't use the same strategy when you're fixing a targeted communication failure versus a widespread system collapse.
This table sums it up perfectly. For Parkinson's, the goal is pretty direct. We're missing dopamine, so let's try to replace it or mimic its effects. Drugs like levodopa get converted into dopamine in the brain, tackling that chemical deficit head-on. But for Alzheimer's, well, it's way more complex. There's no one single chemical we can just replace. Instead, the medications we have try to boost other chemical messengers to improve communication between the brain cells that are still healthy, hoping to slow down that cognitive slide.
But there is one thing that is absolutely the same and absolutely essential for both of these journeys, and that's supportive care. While the medicines are working on the brain chemistry, things like physical and speech therapy are vital for managing the day-to-day symptoms. And maybe most important of all, emotional support for both the person living with the disease and their family is just critical for navigating these incredibly tough challenges.
So here's the bottom line. While both of these diseases tragically steal people's futures, they do it in very distinct ways. Understanding that Parkinson's is a disease of movement from a dopamine deficit, and Alzheimer's is a disease of cognition from plaques and tangles, that's the first step. It leads to better diagnoses, the right treatments, and the kind of empathy we need to really care for people. And it leaves all of us with that big, hopeful question. As we understand more and more, what will that next breakthrough look like?